Hello, everybody. Welcome to the Story Studio podcast. Are you guys going to
think of John when I do that? Hello.
Oh, yes. Or the belly button from Seinfeld. Are you? Hello. That's more of that. Is it weird to know that we're being watched live again? I mean, usually that's true of Dave all the time, like 24/7.
Dave, do you ever feel not watched?
Where's my tinfoil hat?
Yeah, I think he's all about the podcast because you know where to focus. Most of your spies are coming from directly in front of you. So much better than the ones you don't know about.
I like the podcast because, especially this one over the one we rarely do anymore, because you guys, require most of the cameras usually on you guys, and while you're doing that, I'm free to masturbate as I want.
Well, I think that we should go ahead and mention the new plan for Worst Show Ever, right? So that's officially done, officially over. But we did decide. Hold on. Officially.
This topic.
Right. Officially. And he did get masturbation in the first few moments of the quote serious podcast. So the lines really are blurring. The dream is collapsing. But we did decide that, much like you remember that episode of The Office where Michael Scott decided to declare bankruptcy, and he walked in and he said, "I declare bankruptcy." So it's like much in that same vein, we imagine Dave can kind of just declare worst show ever. Like, I've had a really crazy experience with a bagger at Publix. I need a worst show.
In all of, I think you've probably read this story in maybe 6 or 7 different business books. Yeah. But you know how the Toyota assembly line, any person at any time can stop the assembly line.
Right.
Well, it's like if Dave at any time could just stop the podcast
and once we're
stop it now.
No. He can't stop the podcast. He can stop the machine. So imagine we're advanced enough that we've got systems. We've got a year of in advance. We aren't rushing on anything. We aren't tight on anything. Then it can be middle of maker time. Dave just gets to be okay, everybody stop what they're doing right now and get on the podcast. I need to bitch.
Would you like that kind of power, Dave?
I would have called one this morning.
Ooh, I need a quick version of that story.
Oh yeah, this is your something cool. What's your something cool? Family Discord.
I'm saving that for worst show ever.
Oh, so
you're gonna forget it. We aren't doing one today, and you're gonna
down.
No, all right.
If Dave's starting the Black Diary again, can you imagine a show called the Black Diary, and it's just Dave's to-do list? Maybe.
Well, there is a blacklist.
Oh, yeah, but yours is a lot more personal than that.
Very dark list.
And do you think that your episodes would take place at Target?
Do you think that Dave calls all the mirrors in his house Black Mirror? So
in the morning they're covered. What do you want?
So you don't have a something cool then, Dave?
Oh yeah, I do. Of course I do.
All right, let's hear it.
I'm kind of torn, and I can't remember if I mentioned this.
I thought maybe that was the cool thing. You had a fidget.
I'm torn.
I thought it was I thought it was another poop thing.
Yeah.
What?
No. Welcome to all our new subscribers.
Anyway, I think I might have mentioned when I started watching it, the show Black Summer on Netflix, yes. their zombie show. Well, I finished watching it, and I'm very torn on it. On one hand, I absolutely loved the pace. It was nonstop from the very get-go. There were no season or there's no episode long monologues or somebody's whining and worrying about stuff like happens on some of the other shows. And I do like those slower episodes on the other shows, but this one doesn't have that sort of slowdown. In fact, there's no character development at all. You join there really is there, but they're subtle. You could tell they know what.
So was it like Hardcore Harry?
Almost.
Was that the guy from Gleaming the Cube?
Except you don't vomit while you're watching.
No, Hardcore Harry was this really crap. Okay.
I was thinking of Harry Hardon. It's an honest mistake.
Hardcore Harry was supposed to be a first person.
It was a first person movie.
Oh, I've actually seen I've seen some.
And I actually like that.
It's a bold concept, but that's kind of hard to sustain for 2 hours and.
That's what I thought when I saw the trailer.
Well, this you could tell it they do have the characters are developed, but they don't share it with the audience necessarily, and I kind of like.
Works.
I kind of like that because you were like dropped in. Like, what would you be trying to figure out if you were with these people? It's
So character development is super easy, barely an inconvenience.
It's but there are subtle
Thank you,
things, and the acting is good. I thought anyway. But it's hardcore. They kill off people you think are going to be main characters, get killed off frequently. But you don't have the burden of caring about them so much.
I do like that.
Yeah, you're speaking my language.
No stakes.
I really
None.
like. It's important to me to not care about the things that I watch.
They're all going to die, but don't worry about it. Just sit back and chill.
No,
if
You're
you don't
absolutely
know
hitting
them.
my criteria.
I'm being a bit smartass. I actually did, I did care for some of the deaths.
Okay, I got a question. Maybe they're taking it a little bit too, like they're not taking it far enough. Maybe you should care so little that you actually laugh when they die.
You're rooting for them.
Right. Then it turns into almost like slapstick.
Yeah, I hate that shit. In the people that made this show made something called Z Nation, which I feel might be more in that camp. It was a little campy. What I saw of it, and I didn't want to watch it at all. I might give it a chance. I don't know, but this one I thought was really well done for what it was. The only problem was there was only 8 episodes, and it gets shorter as they go. And the last 2 episodes were like 25 minutes and 21 minutes or something. And I'm like, what the fuck? How do you do a season finale? Don't. I know what you're thinking. But for TV, how do you do a season finale where the last episode is like, what the fuck? You're left with very, very blue balls. My balls were so blue. They were like penguins.
That's a very good question, Dave.
Looks like there are a couple of Smurfs down there.
Yeah, Dave, that is a very good question. Why do you think that they did that?
I don't know. To leave you wanting more?
It's pretty frustrating, isn't it?
Yeah, it is.
So in short, what you love about this show is that they made you care exactly the right amount about the people. Not too much.
I want to know more. I definitely. The one thing I will say that they like. I hate when a mystery's over. There's still so much mystery because you don't know anything.
It sounds like this is a massive reframe. You don't know. It's like in Sean. Remember when we wrote Weeds and he said it's this high so pure you won't even know you're high.
Yes.
I'm kind of torn on whether.
So is it possible that there's zero mystery and that's why it seems so mysterious?
I'm wondering if they're so good that they're letting your mind do the work, which I think the best shows and books do. Like they involve you and they work against your They do work against your expectations a few times, and I do like that. So they're obviously they know what they're doing. But there's a part of me that wonders, like, well, maybe they're just making shit up as they go along, and not in a good way, like Lost.
Yeah, I'm not sure.
But I don't know.
Disagree with that, but
I think you all should watch it.
All right,
It's not that big of a commitment. It's really short episodes.
You know what's really amazing as a movie?
In the last thing before we change, the zombies in it are super fast, and there's like a heavy set dude that's running a lot, and every time he's running, I'm like, he's gonna die. So,
but not
that
so
was
far.
very intense for me. What?
But not so far. He's still alive.
I won't say how it ends, but he makes it quite far. I won't say how far.
Man, when I saw this reminds me of when I saw Ernest Goes to Camp, because I was like, it's so they're so masterfully made it look like a terrible movie that all the great stuff is just like under the surface, hidden. You have to intuit it.
There's a lot of philosophical questions that movie asks you, and you may not be
like, what are you looking at, Vern, or whatever?
So
you guys have anything cool?
I definitely have something cool. So Johnny and I just took a 2-day trip, and I always use trips away from home.
It was so romantic.
It was. It really was.
It's good to get away from the kids.
We had an Airbnb, but there was no blood in it, unfortunately. Dave would have been disappointed. It was clean.
No, but we did enjoy thinking about Dave when we were going into it, though. Like there were many Dave-worthy notices.
Have you guys ever shared like an actual like one room, like a hotel room together?
Yes.
Oh yeah, I mean there have to be 2 beds, but all the time.
That's my next question.
Yes, always two beds. But yeah, a few times.
I can't sleep with somebody else in the room. Like
You can't sleep with your wife in the room.
I am more comfortable
right.
having my own space, but yeah, I mean, it just makes a lot more sense. What's your something cool though, Sean?
Yeah, we're bootstrapping, dude. You share rooms when you're bootstrapping. So my something cool is we had this little trip, and every time I'm away from home, I travel. Like it's an opportunity to watch things I wouldn't watch with Cindy, because like
a donkey show in Tijuana.
So much porn.
Yes, it's a donkey show in Tijuana. So in this case, it was the show Mindhunter, which I wanted to watch for a while. And Dave,
you see how Dave sat?
I did.
Netflix?
Yes. What'd you say?
On Netflix?
Yeah.
Love that show.
Okay, I just started watching it. But I actually, so yesterday, I barely wrote, and I had the house to myself, and I watched 3 episodes of Mindhunter, and I watched 4 while on the trip, on the plane and stuff. So I really, really like it. So for those of you who haven't seen Mindhunter or don't know what it is, it's David Fincher's second show after House of Cards on Netflix. And it's like what I would compare it to, this is a weird comparison, but I think it's really apt, is the show Masters of Sex on Showtime, but with serial killing, and done by David Fincher.
And it's based on a guy named John Douglas, who started up the behavioral crime unit
in the FBI. Yeah, it takes place in 1977, right after Son of Sam is caught, and
it's a heavily fictionalized version of like his experience starting everything up. So
yeah,
and
it's
makes me like it more. I didn't want like a true crime thing.
Yeah, it's really interesting, and the language on it is awesome. And it's not super violent visually, but the language is really traumatic. Like it's basically it's set at a time where the word serial killer didn't exist. These are the people who came up with that terminology, and they had to really go against the grain of the FBI, because at that time the FBI is like, you don't go in there and commiserate with killers. That's stupid. Like, why are you giving them attention? But it's not about the attention. It's about understanding the way their brains work. And it's just really fascinating. And it just does everything great. The direction's great. The acting's great. The psychology is just phenomenal. But it is psychologically violent. So know that going in. It's why I didn't watch it with Cindy.
Oh, she would have loved it.
Yeah, it's definitely her kind of stuff. Right before bed is her favorite time to watch that stuff too.
And I like their patience in storytelling. They're like little seeds that they drop very early on in the series that I think they're building up towards something really cool. And I hope they fictionalize it even more as it goes.
There is going to be a season 2?
Oh, yeah.
Oh, awesome. Great. I didn't know if they were like just telling a story and it gets told. That's awesome. I'd love to watch more of that. So more trips next year.
That's Sean's plan. Mine is also a show that I think it was it's on Netflix, called I'm Sorry, and I turned Sean onto it.
It's my autobiography title. What are you talking about?
Wait, didn't we do this for something cool?
No, we didn't, because I've had a note for a while, and I introduced you to it, and then I made a note, and then I was like, watch that son of a bitch steal it and talk about
yeah. Oh, I would have. It's so good.
It's really good. It's Andrea Savage, who I just really, really like. There's only one season on Netflix, but I know that there's another, and it's just wonderful. It's obviously it's a half-hour comedy, and she just gets herself into all sorts of awkward situations that are just really smart.
Do you want to give like a sample of one?
Yeah. So in the pilot, she discovers that one of her daughter's friends, like one of the school moms, used to be like a porn star who has like all sorts of anal sex records, and many awkward situations ensue.
Wow, Dave's face.
Dave's face already. Well, Dave's not exactly a sitcom sort of guy.
He might like this. The show is very much Curb Your Enthusiasm. But with a female lead who is so much more likable than Larry David.
Yeah, and that's a quantum difference.
Larry David's perfectly likable.
That's a quantum difference for me, because I did not like Curb Your Enthusiasm.
Yeah,
and I like
what? The writing on Curb Your Enthusiasm is great, but I don't like spending time with someone I don't like, and I really
love Larry.
Of course you do. You're the only one who's like looking at that show thinking they just don't understand him.
I think they're watching me. That
right.
show.
So then no, but this show, like, she's a comedy writer. I just relate with her so much more than I do Larry David.
Like, don't you love her relationship with her writing partner?
Yes, totally. See, I identify with her. She's a comedy writer, so she has no filter.
But she also can't really, she's afraid of like giving her using like the social network for the neighborhood, using her name instead of her husband's name, because people can Google her, because it's all really inappropriate. She's like, what if the people at school like Google me on a podcast and find me talking about something stupid?
Right,
and she doesn't know where to draw.
Relatable.
She doesn't know where to draw the line. So like all the mothers will be discussed. There's this. Right, so all the mothers will be like making little jokes, and they'll make things that's just a little out of line, and everybody laughs. And at the end of this scene, somebody wheels over a little, or no, I think they're showing pictures, and there's this little baby boy.
No, it's in strollers. There's two. There's
two, and they're in strollers. She goes, "Oh, he's going to be a lady killer. Like, look at him. All the little girls behind him. He's a lady killer." And then Andrea looks at the girl, and she goes, she's talking about this other, and she goes, "Yeah, she's going to be a little cock tease." And they all get offended. And they're like, "What? You just said he's a lady killer. I can't say she's going to be a cock tease." So anyway, I recommend that. I'm sorry. All right. So we were going to talk today. We batted the idea back and forth a few times.
We were going to talk, but we're not going to do it now. The show's over. We're out of time.
Dave wants to vent about something.
Is it the public sky?
I think so. I haven't consulted his list yet.
I think it's really how the evolution of like our evolution over the past few years, things that we've learned, and this is our way of bringing together a few different lessons, because I know that Sean has one. He just celebrated an anniversary that he'll talk about, but there's some of the stuff that I've been writing by myself for the past, well, I guess just the current book, but the next one will be by myself too. And that's very, very different, like in a paradigm way. It's not just a matter of mechanically different, like I need to approach the project differently. I need to write differently. So these are all interesting things that I thought were interesting. And so we're going to talk about, I think the better you know yourself as a writer, the better writer you are, is I think sort of the thesis here. Would you agree with it?
Yeah, for sure. And I think that we're also really lucky because we work collaboratively, not just with the three of us, but we're up to 20 now. And so there's a lot of opportunity to work with other people and to see how other people perceive you. And so again, Johnny and I were on a trip this last week, and we went to, we were working with my former partner, Lori, for anyone who's been listening to this for a while probably has heard the name Lori. And so we went there, and it was a really interesting trip because I think Lori and Johnny have met each other a few times now, and Dave met her. The very first time that Dave and I actually ever met in person was in Cincinnati when we were working with Lori 8-9 years ago. I mean, it's so long ago now. Especially
but this was like an audition for me. She knew me in very small snippets.
Yeah, she knew Johnny in really small snippets, and in a way, Johnny's also the person who not that this is an accurate view at all, but in her vulnerable heart, Johnny's the person who took her away from me, right, on our very last dinner.
Yeah, just like I took you away from Dave.
Whore!
But, on our very last dinner together in Cincinnati, she was very, very sad. And I gave her a copy of Unicorn Western, which Johnny and I had just finished and was in print. And, so Did
she get to the wedding scene?
She read the whole thing.
She read the whole thing, and she specifically did a conversational aside, specifically to me, to talk about how she really appreciated that book and the concepts in it. And what did she describe? Because I'm dropping the ball.
She got all the big ideas in it, which is like Lori is actually.
And yes, Unicorn Western does have big ideas. If you're rolling,
it actually does. It's a very Realm and Sands book, although I did not know what that. I had no idea that meant anything back then. But it is very much a mine and Johnny's story, and you can really see that. And she did read it right away. Like she read it immediately. Wants to know what I'm doing. And anyway, the point is there's a lot of closure for the trip because, Johnny's heard all the Lori stories from me, from Dave, just from our history together. But I think it was probably, and correct me if I'm wrong, Johnny, but I think it was probably interesting to see us together in that space and, in full context.
And you mean you and Lori?
Me and Lori, yeah. Mm-hmm. And for me, like it was kind of coming home. I got closure because I left there, and Lori is the person who kind of taught me a lot of what I know. Even if she didn't teach me directly, she was the one who paid for my experience and, put me in masterminds, and just, she cared so much about nurturing my brain. And so she's the one who really made me aware, I think, in a lot of ways, of my incremental growth and how important it is to be mindful and pay attention to my growth and how I'm trying to help grow the people around me. And so Johnny and I had a few conversations about that. And I think for our company, it's been a tremendous year of growth. I mean, just in the most marvelous, miraculous ways. And I think as, the principals in the company, the three of us, have had to grow a lot as we're transitioning. And we're kind of in the sunset of like this first beautiful phase and going into some other areas. And I think that we've all grown a lot this year. And I think we've all been aware of how each other have grown. So I think it'd be really cool if we went individually and said, like, what is an area that we know that we've grown? We've identified that area for ourselves in the last year, and how it makes a difference. And then we can all talk about growth that we've seen in our colleagues and each other. And then we could talk about, if there's time, because that might already be it. But where we see our skill sets and our growth like a year from now, what are we projecting? Because that's important too. A lot of times we just let life happen to us. And if we're not our own director and we're not really deciding what we want to do and what's important to us to get there, then it's like life happens by accident. And I think that
then someone else will decide.
Someone else will decide. Like that's a true statement. So I think it's good to kind of put that out there, and that's where this all started. So I guess I will start because that is where it started.
Yeah, just so you know, I reject the rigidity of your framing. I will cover all those things, but you'll have to analyze it after the fact. Oh, there's where Johnny talked about evolution.
That sounds totally fine. Yeah, I mean, I like conversational better anyway, that. So, so this started because right now it's May, what is it, May 4th, May 3rd, something like that, May 3rd. Yeah. So I started last May 1st. I started writing every day for the first time in a couple of years. And so I just hit my 365-day streak a couple of days ago while we were out of town, actually. Yes. And in that time, I've written 1.34 million words, which is a record for a year by far for me. And that was in addition to, running a lot of the company and organizing a lot of other people and helping a lot of other, product get created and ready for market this year. And so that did take a lot of diligence. It did take a lot of me learning about myself. And so that's a kind of a good place to start, I think. The best thing that I was able to do in the last year is build that muscle and build that consistency. And it was really hard because it was like dictation was another one. And the only reason I was able to do dictation was because I'd already built the daily muscle for regular writing. And I think that for me, I know, like I kind of figured this out before, but this year really tested it. I know that I'm always going to be more consistent if I write every single day, even if it's just a little bit, even if all I can get is 30 minutes. I've seen all the math. I've graphed it out a bunch of times. I can write 10,000 words a day, but it burns me out. I can't sustain it. And so, even though I can have maybe 3 amazing days in a row and just crank the copy, I can't do that for long. But if I just promise myself 1,000 words a day, which is the only promise I made to myself a year ago, was 1,000 words a day. So at the very least, I would have 365,000. But, I did substantially more than that because, of course, I'm going to hit my 1,000, but a lot of days I hit 5. Some days I hit 2, but whatever. It's every single day. And I know that that's the best way for me to not only keep the habit, but to get really much better at it. So now I'm not only hitting those same numbers in less time, I'm actually writing much more competently. So my first drafts are like, okay, that's much better than what my first drafts used to be. So anyway, that's my biggest area of growth, I think, this year.
Yeah, I think that's really a know thyself thing, which is something that we've mentioned a lot. I am curious if that would if that would work for me. And the answer is probably yes, but I don't
Until
know
it
if it would.
didn't, because
I don't know
you
if it
might
would be
resent
worth it.
it. Yeah, right. There'd be too, yes, it would work, but then you'd also hate write sometimes, which I have too. But, like yesterday I had to hate write. I got my 1,000 in, and it was a little bit begrudging. And then I went and watched Mindhunter, which is what I really wanted to do, because I traveled for all week, and like, that's what I wanted to do. So it isn't always easy, but I talked a little bit about this at the summit, because Eileen was saying that, it's not a little compulsive, and I'm just not a compulsive person at all. So it's not like, that's really not the reason.
I think it's a little compulsive, but not in a bad way.
It's compulsive with like permission. It's like, okay, you really want to be on this because it's knowing that I made a promise to myself, unless I have a real reason. Now, if I was really, really sick, I would not force my words out at all. I'd be like, okay, I'm not supposed to write today. But so far in the last year, there's never been a day where I actually couldn't write, right? I've been alert. I've never been too sick. There's been days when I didn't feel like it, but that's a different thing. If I know I can do it, I should do it.
Well, the deceptively simple way to look at that in terms of a lot of things with slippery definitions is what works. So this is kind of a minor thing, but I recently read a book by Dan Harris called 10% Happier, which I actually think I mentioned. And I don't know if either of you, Dave, I think you said you listened to the podcast or something. Mm-hmm. If you've ever heard him, he said a lesson that he learned in one of like ashrams or weekend retreats or something was a guy just kind of stopped him with an idea of, well, does that work? And I don't remember the context, but it was like, he was worried, for instance, about whether being Zen would make him lose his edge or something like that. And during one of these crises, some Zen monk or something was like, well, facility is the best judge. Does it work? And I think that's what all of this is you kind of have to ask yourself literally what works. So for instance, when you talk about compulsion, it would be easy to say, well, that's a compulsive thing, but like, think about what other things we have dual meanings. It's bad to be addicted to something, but then if somebody is like addicted to being healthy or addicted to their family, like nobody says, oh, you shouldn't do that. It's just a choice of words, right? Like that's just a problem. And I think that it's the same with compulsion. Well, it's only compulsion if it's
so here's an example too, and I don't think that's my big significant accomplishment for the last year, but like in knowing yourself,
it's a hack. Yeah,
right. It is a hack, and I think that the thing for me, it's not just it's a priority. So a lot of times in the past, before I actually really cracked this nut and realized I just got to do it every day, now I understand I can add more things. Now, I can't try to develop 3 new habits at once. I always fail. I've never managed to do that. I need to build one habit and it becomes something that I just do without thinking about. And then I can add another one. Anytime I'm like, I could do 4 things because it's January 1st. By February 8th, they all suck. So like one at a time really does matter. And with like tightening this in, what it really did for me was more than build the habit, it made me more aware of the way that I spend my time. So it's pretty easy to get lost in acidic activities. For a lot of people, that's social media. For me, it might be, watching YouTube videos, which I could get lost in that. But if I have to get my work done, if I haven't turned my words in, I'm just less likely to like fuck myself.
It makes it a pattern break too. I think that's important because you can say, okay, I've been watching YouTube videos for 4 hours. I'm going to take 45 minutes to write these words, and then I'm going to come right back, motherfucker, like with a vengeance. I'm going to come right back and watch
once you're rolling, you're like,
it breaks your pattern.
Do I really want to go back to the destructive acidic thing I was doing?
Or even if you don't want to keep rolling with the writing, do you want to go back to the bad thing, or do you then shift to something that's less?
That's exactly right.
Did either of you read or listen to James Clear, Atomic Habits?
I didn't listen to that, but I do like James Clear.
Yeah, we like James.
I've now listened to it twice. I also have the book. I like it a lot. And one of the things he talks about is like early on when you're setting up your habits, to start very small. And I don't remember the exact story, but like somebody that needed to go to the gym or something to work out, he said, okay, just go to the gym for like a minute You can't stay like 4 minutes or whatever. I don't remember what it was. Just go, but you can't stay. But just do that for like a period of time. And the guy did it for a period of time. And eventually he's like, well, while I'm here, I may as well work out. Basically, just show up to do put a small time limit on it first, or a small word count. Just expect yourself to do something very small to start off with, but consistently. And eventually you will expand that. And I found that true.
It. Yeah, no, I love that. And I also love that I can tell Dave that for 10 years and then James Clear says it and he's like, boom, atomic habits.
Well, to be fair, you inspired a lot of my changes. But it's like the right mindset to hear something. You can hear it, but you don't really.
Yeah, no. I totally know, dude. I'm just giving you
and if it weren't for you pushing me in the way that you have, and especially like last year and that whole conversation we had, I wouldn't be receptive to a lot of the ideas that I'm now, seeking out and doing. And that is one of the things I do. I walk almost every day. I haven't done it every day yet because something comes up, and on those days I don't walk, and I don't force myself to walk. Like I in the beginning I did. It's like I got to walk at least an hour a day or fuck it. But then I found like there were a lot of days I couldn't get an hour in, and I wouldn't even bother. So now I'm just 20 minutes minimum a day, and I do that now consistently. The days I don't do it for whatever reason, I feel like shit. So,
I'm glad you're noticing that too. So Bonnie, I talked to Bonnie yesterday, and she really wants to start building her writing habit more. And it's the same thing. Bonnie's really, really giving, so she'll always put other people's work before her own. And so we were on the phone because I was trying to get her to knock that shit off, and treat herself better and make sure that she's writing if she wants to write. And so she that's the same thing. Because I do believe in streaks, and I think it will work for Bonnie. And so, but if it was, we have to get 1,000 words down, that's just like, she's going to break that. So she's starting with 100 words. Like, do 100 words for 30 days, then make it 200, then 300, until it's just really, really, really easy. I imagine I'm going to get more words this year than I did last year because, when I'm not traveling, when I don't have a lot of weird things on my plate and a lot of pattern interruptions, getting my words these days is easy. Like it's straightforward. It's when I break flow that it's not. And this is a good time actually to turn and because I love that, Dave. I love all of that. And to say where you've grown this year, from my perspective, what I see is that you're working as hard as you ever have, but you're working smarter than you ever had. And you're not taking the setbacks as signs of defeat. You're acknowledging them as part of the process. And I've never really seen you do that before. In our history together, when things didn't work out, you took it personally, or you thought you weren't smart enough or working hard enough or creative enough, or people didn't like your work, or like whatever it was. And that's just never it. Like, this is all very fluid, and storytelling is an art, and selling our stories is kind of art, kind of science. And, we're in a laboratory where the variables are constantly being changed. And so you can't personalize that. And I think for the first time, you've really understood that. And it also seems to me that you've really taken a lot of ownership in your, your part in that. And where, we made plans and we didn't follow through on those plans. And so you can't expect to not start over. And I think this year you realized, so it's not like we're starting from 6 years of progress. We're actually starting at 0, because that's what happens when the rest of the industry pushes themselves while we stagnate. And so acknowledging that allowed us to really build for, right now, basically our next big release is the thing you were working on last year that you were really, really proud of. And then we're just every month for the foreseeable future. And we couldn't have got there without a lot of self-awareness on your part, and acknowledging that this is all just work, and you got to show up every day and do the work. And I love seeing that from you. It's changed our working relationship in the best possible way.
What?
Yeah, go ahead.
Well, the thing I noticed from Sean, he's always, been consistent and hardworking and all of that stuff, and conscientious. But I noticed, like in the most recent thing I read from you and handed back to you, like I enjoyed reading that more than anything I've enjoyed reading in a while, including stuff from other people. And that your prowess as a storyteller is really awesome, and it's gotten way better. The end needed some work, and we got to work on that. Yeah, you're like Stephen King with the end now. But
Well, you know what? That's actually, I mean, fair. But that particular project, because it had to fit. First of all, I wrote it a year ago. Like that was the second thing I wrote a year ago.
Okay, well, then scratch everything I said.
Yeah, well, no, I've actually loved that because the last several things you've had really positive reactions to the last several drafts you've gotten, and that's been really fun. That's what you want on the other side of a collaboration is excitement. And I've seen more excitement for a story from you this year than I have in a long time, and that's been really refreshing too. But yeah, that particular story was hard because I got it all the way to the end, but the end, it had to tie into the larger world all of a sudden. And that larger world wasn't being formed yet. It was kind of on hiatus, but I was waiting for drafts and I had to write something. So I'd be like, I'll take that. And then you were asking me questions about the end. And I'm like, dude, I wrote that a year ago. I have no idea. Like, I don't know. So I haven't even looked at your edits yet. I'll get to them. But yeah, I'd love hearing that. Thank you.
But I am looking forward to writing in that world a lot more than anything else that we've done collaboratively. So
yeah, and your sensibilities are kind of perfect for it too.
It's been sorry. It's been well, because I was noticing the comments and I was thinking how everybody's like kind of asleep today. I think that'll build back up, but the energy was different. Yeah, I mean, I'm right now, I'm writing on my own, and I've written everything with Sean since, I mean, I did write in between. There were a few things here and there, but they were anomalous. And because they were anomalous, because they were like the exception rather than the rule, then I was trying to use my existing skill set for writing and trying to adapt it to, well, it's like this, but without Sean or something like that. Or it's like what I normally do, only I need to write the outline. And what I'm starting to realize more and more is that it is a fundamentally different kind of writing. And this is informing, like, it makes me aware on a meta level of the stuff that I've been taking for granted, even when I am working in a collaboration, if that makes any sense. So I think there's one thing to use your muscles and your skills on autopilot, and then it's another thing to kind of be aware of them, to be like above and see, okay, well, that day wasn't as good, here's maybe why, or that day was really good and here's why, and here's the habits that work and here's the habits that don't. And as I'm writing on my own, I think that I'm much, much more of a pantser. Like I originally thought I'm a pantser, and then I started writing, like you can see this. I think it's in Write, Publish, Repeat. I think it's in probably some of the other stuff that we talked about around the podcast. And I said, oh, well, I'm not actually a pantser. I'm like a plotzer. I'm like in the middle. Like I want to take the plot and I want to fill in the blanks. I want to see where the story goes. A little bit. But I actually don't think that's true. I actually think that I am like that when I'm in a collaborative relationship, but I think I have to pants when I'm writing on my own. Like I'm realizing that more and more and more. We did this thing, I think we actually talked about the idea of writing to the midpoint, or I'm sorry, outlining to the midpoint before beginning writing. And so I was like, that's the solution. That's the problem right there. I can just write to but no, it really is very close to pure pantsing. And that means a few things. It means that I'm going to hit spots where I have to just kind of stop and think. So this morning, I reached another one of those things where I'm like, and usually the pattern is something like this. Really good scene. Oh, this is going good. I got to figure it out. This is going really well. And then you hit a wall. The chapter ends, and then I go, oh yeah, that's kind of as far as I had some idea. And so I would kind of just sit there, and I would tend to get frustrated, and then I would start to notice word counts. And this is why I think something like streaks or tracking words could actually be dangerous for me. That starts to look like the whole worth of how many words there are, because when I'm only writing a draft on an outline somebody's given me, then that's pretty pure. Like my job is to produce words. But when I'm writing on my own, some of it doesn't show up in words. So this morning I wrote and I thought, and I was like, oh, I can't figure it out. I got out of 1,000 hate words basically, and enough to like hit the streak if I'd have been doing it. And then it was early. It was only like 9:00, but I was like, I got to go for a run. Like I have to. I don't even understand this. And it's not. There's a difference between I got to go for a run because I'm procrastinating or avoiding. But I only let myself do it if I didn't let my mind wander, if I didn't wear headphones, if I kept my mind on the story, but not even in an unforgiving analytical way, which is the way I would typically do it, which looks something like this. Okay, he's in a room. How's he going to get out of the room? It has to be much more free form of like, what are the big pictures? I actually started with theme, which I don't normally do. But I know that in On Writing, Stephen King tells the story of getting like, what, 3/4 of the way into the stand or something, feeling like he had a mess of like loose wires and then being like, oh my God, what do I do? But sometimes you just pull back and go, what is this story really about? And once I did that, I was like, oh, okay, that helps me to reframe it. That helps me to go with the flow more. There's things I'm building into the draft where I'm like, I don't know how I can describe this without somebody reading it, but it's almost like it's more of a free-flowing process that doesn't adhere as much to like plot standards, and then I'll go back on the revision and try to tweak it and make it all make sense. But it just, the bottom line is that it's fundamentally different, and I hadn't allowed for that before.
And do you feel like working alone makes you better when you collaborate, and collaborating makes you better alone as long as you're paying attention to the differences?
Probably, but I think that what I'm really becoming aware of is that they're different animals. So I think that I just sort of thought that a Platt and Truant book was the same as a Truant book, but with Platt added, which would make sense on paper, but it's actually not. It's a different. It's as if I collaborated with a totally different person. It's a different animal. And as a real simple example, there was this discussion in our company Slack just a few days ago, maybe it was last week, about sentence length and complexity. It started with a discussion of semicolons of all things. Do you remember that discussion, you guys? Yeah. So, and I was like, well, I don't know. I like the flow of, I use a lot of semicolons. I use a lot of strings of commas and dashes. I like long sentences because unless something is happening very rapid fire, there are, well, not in all scenes or anything, but I do like when something is happening and it feels like stream of consciousness. I want to be able to feel that in the writing. That feels like a voice thing. And some of the thoughts back and forth were, well, that's less commercial. People get hung up. All those things are true. But I think that when I write on my own, I don't self-censor those things. Censor is the wrong word. I don't change those things on the back end. And I think that you do, Sean. Sometimes you're like, well, I break up some sentences. I remove 2/3 of the semicolons or whatever. And I don't do that because I'm me. And you know how they say a third person objective standpoint because they can see past but it's like, I don't see past my own blind spots, but I actually kind of like that for a limited amount of work. I wouldn't want all my stuff to be that way.
Yeah, no, that does make sense.
But to be able to be like, you know what, maybe it does slow people down, but I want that voice to exist out in the world for just like 5% of my stuff. That's cool. That's enough.
Yeah, no, I do totally get that. I also get the idea that, because I've had this also where I've had pure writing days devoted, and I need to get my word count in, but it's outlining, which means most of my time is spent staring or walking or thinking or on a call with somebody, right? And that's hard because you want to feel good about it.
You want quantitative, and then you knock the brainstorming because it doesn't produce something quantitative.
Yeah, so I've just navigated around that by always having like, okay, well, I'm moving this to B, and on this, like I do count outlining words. So they're always shorter words because it takes way longer to write 10,000 words worth of outline than it does to write, 10,000 words worth of story. But, I'm content with that. So yeah, part of that 1.34 million is outlines. There's quite a few outlines in there. So the thing I would like to acknowledge for Johnny, that I've really seen Johnny in the last year is, and not to sound all woo-woo on this at all, because I know already, I already know as it's going to come out of my mouth, it's going to sound a little woo-woo, but I've seen Johnny's always worked on himself, always. Like, he's just 2 days ago, he's like, I just decided I'm going to run the Austin Marathon, right? Because it's something to do. He's always put a lot of attention into what he can accomplish physically. But in the last year, I've seen him put a lot more attention into developing his emotional self. And it's been really rewarding to watch, because I think it's just, I don't even know how to express it really without telling a lot of long-winded stories, and we're getting close to the end, but it has been like, I've really, a lot of the best work that we've done in the company is kind of emotional work. And especially like, I mean, Dave, it's all emotional work. He got through some real shit and left that baggage behind and worked on himself so that he could become a better creator and a better provider for his family and all of that. And he had a different set of things to work on. But because I think Johnny comes from a place of accomplishment, right? It's easier to not think there are things to work on, and we all have things to work on. And I think Johnny's been a little more internal this last year.
Well, I mean, I think that the thing about accomplishment is that it's almost like I would think that I was driven by accomplishment, and I think that that's true in a lot of ways. But in order to accomplish, let's see if I can avoid getting too philosophical here. In order to accomplish something, there's usually something that is being defeated. There's a comparison. You can't accomplish without there being a comparison, right? Because you need to be able to compare. If I accomplish something, that means what I did was better than some goal, right? There was a goal and I did better than it. Therefore,
I think it's a little bit like physical work is more like words counted, where emotional work is more like brainstorming. Like it's harder to see those results.
Well, I mean, I think that's kind of where I'm going with this. Is the tendency to compare is something that I do naturally, and I think that there's nothing bad about that as long as you're aware of it. There's also nothing good about it unless you're, as long as you're aware of it. But I think that there's an objective truth of I am doing something through my day. And then there's the judgment about it, i.e. that is worthy, that is not worthy. That is acceptable for a day's work. That is, I slacked off and there's a lack of performance there. And so today I'm behind right now. Like as far as what I'm trying to achieve on word count, I'm behind. And I knew I was behind coming into today, and I knew I couldn't write yesterday because I was just beat to hell from travel. So I came into today with expectations of, I want to do a double shift. I really want to put a lot of words on the paper. So when it was that hard to get those first 1,000, and then I said, I'm going to stop and go running, that was like, okay, it would have been really easy to be like, well, I failed. I didn't accomplish that. And so what I'm trying to do, and I think it does overlap with some of the stuff that you were talking about earlier, although I can't remember what, but there's like this sense of forgiveness and embracing things that aren't as quantitative. So I had been giving quantitative things precedence over qualitative things like solving a problem. So I did get another 1,000 words. So 2,000 instead of like 5, 6, 8 that I would have liked to have gotten today. But then I also cracked the problem, and understanding that is part of the process when I work on my own, I need to factor it in. Like it's unfair to look at word counts and only word counts when I'm working by myself. I guess, I don't know if that answers the question.
No, I understand that.
But I'm trying to diminish my natural tendency to compare one thing to another and to judge something as this is good, this is bad, and that's kind of, and that is a personal work thing. And I think that's what I'm trying to get at here is it's more than just writing. It's trying to change my philosophy and way of looking at the world at the same time.
Well, okay. It's not just from what I've seen, it doesn't seem like it's just your outward looking at the world. I think you're paying more attention to how the world might look at you and care a little more about that. Because before, like you're very confident in who you are, and like that's the way I want to do things, and that's good for me. But I think you're observing a little more. You're warming a little more. Honestly,
I think they're two sides of the same coin. I think you're absolutely right. I think that getting out of my head in that particular way is just another facet of saying where is my place in the world, rather than just everything myopically like through these eyes and that sort of thing. I don't know if that makes sense either, but that's kind of how it feels. I mean, I don't know. I guess that's definitely growth. Like it feels like growth, but as far as like we were talking about change and how our processes evolved. And I think that's for any writer, being aware of yourself, being aware of the others that you might be working with is a good way to not get stagnant and to always get better at what it is you do.
Yeah, agreed. Dave, have you noticed anything? I mean, outside of yourself? I mean, we kind of talk for you. Like, what has been your big breakthroughs and things that you've noticed about yourself? Where do you want to see yourself a year from now? And have you noticed anything from from the company or us, I guess.
Well, I noticed that the company's gotten more focused on the things I want to focus on, and I like that a lot. I feel like we're all on the same page for the first time in a while. And as far as myself, I just want to get a little more out of my own head and to focus more and to get more things done, not only in my writing, but I want to do some art stuff and things to make me feel more like I'm thinking of things like legacy and things that I kind of ignored for a long time, and things I haven't done that I want to do with whatever time is left. And I know that sounds morbid as fuck, but hey, it's me. So
it's still huge growth.
Yeah. So yeah, that's where I'm at right now. So I'm
Do you feel like you are in your head less than you used to be?
Sometimes, but it's. I think the difference is now when I have a difficult week, like this week was really difficult with anxiety, and it was like out of fucking nowhere, and it hit me. And I don't take Xanax a lot, but I like to know that it's there if I need it. And this week I could not find my bottle of Xanax. And one of my big stressors is not being able to find something. I hate when I can't find something. I hate even more when other people can't find stuff. So it like made me super anxious, and like it was really, this week was really difficult, but I still like did the shit that I have to do. Whereas
you have not dropped a ball. You're reporting every morning, and it's awesome.
Right. So that's the difference. Before I would get so chaotic in my head, and I would either do shit and hate it, or I would just shut down. And now I'm working despite it, knowing that, things will be okay, hopefully. So.
Well, dude, if this makes you feel any better, like seriously, 1.3 whatever last year, right? And you're telling me like you've never been happier with what I'm delivering. I know that Bonnie's been happy with every draft I've given her, and still, like, not all the time, but there are definite times where I'm like, this is all terrible. I hate this. Dave's gonna rip me apart. Bonnie's gonna have to spend forever fixing this. Like it's so easy for creators to get in their head. And just knowing that that's just part of the process, and you can kind of go through it. I mean, not for everybody. Like maybe, I don't know. I think that Johnny's a really confident writer. And there's been times where you're like, yeah, I don't know if this works at all. Because
oh no, I do that a lot. That's actually one of my points about what I'm doing right now is I think with my own. Yeah, well, I think that with my own solo stuff, where it's literally because what I'm talking about is it goes from me to proofreading. So there's no, Sean isn't reading these drafts. Dave would never read the drafts because he gets to the wedding scene, but that's immaterial. So it's, wait, what was the actual question? I forgot the actual question. Like just accepting that it's part of the process there's a thread there that I missed, but whatever. So there you go.
That was super enlightening.
I know, it was really good. Well, I forgot what I was responding to. I think you asked me a question and I was responding to it. Anyway, so I guess that's about it. Any final thoughts on growth or where we're going?
No, I mean, I think it's worth saying where we'd all like to be in a year, and in a year, I would like to be even more focused than I am now. I think my focus in the last 12 months is the best 12 months I've ever had, and I think it will only continue to be more that way. And I would like to, if I can hit my goals for the next 18 months of writing, then I will. By the end of next year, by the end of 2020, I'll be a full year ahead on writing and publishing. And that's a worthy goal for me. I really want to accomplish that because it means that whatever opportunities come to us in Hollywood, like we could take our time and make some really good decisions without having to worry about maintaining the publishing ship. Like that'll be in really good hands and we'll be ahead and the systems will be there. And I think that if I hadn't had the last year of consistency, I couldn't expect that that's even a, reasonable goal, which, I might not hit it, but I'll come close.
I remembered the end of my thought because I don't want to leave that hanging and sound like an idiot. But I think that I am less confident when I am writing by myself because, and this is, I was talking about the process differences, is usually when I know that I've got a safety net in the form of an outline or somebody who's going to read it after me, then it changes my confidence level. I'm like, okay, I'm sure about this. Whereas I think that with everything I've written by myself, past and current, there's a lot more of, well, I don't know if that works. Maybe this is meandering. I mean, honestly, like I kind of wrote a meta chapter today that if you read it in a certain light, it's kind of like, okay, so all that stuff that just happened has kind of been all over the place. What's the real story? Like you can almost see my thought process. And so understand, and I'll make it work. I'll make it work. Like I have confidence in the big picture, but I think much more than with my stuff with you, it's the writing is rewriting thing. Like I think that the final draft births the actual like true story much more. Like it's a bigger contrast between first and second draft.
Totally see that.
But in little ways, like I'm not cutting a lot of words. I'm not adding a lot of words. They're tweaks.
I get that because the second time through the story, like I always go through the story twice before Dave sees it. So if I write a rough draft and then through the second time, I'm like, oh, well, I know this thing that happened at the end. So now I can make it kind of agree. And it's just a few little tweaks along the way can really round that out.
It's always thematic. So we had that book where the secrets that you keep will define you. And so when I was going back through that, then it was like, oh, I see. I need to be highlighting a secret. And it just might be a few words that were mentioned or somebody that I had a way to just put a little finer point on the idea this person is being defined by that thing we haven't learned yet, but the reader knows exists. So the adjustments are very, very small, but at the same time, they're the polish. They're that extra 10% that ends up making a big difference.
Yeah, I totally agree. All right. So in closing, do you think what are the things that you notice? What's the big thing either from either one of us or the company as a whole that you've kind of seen in the last year?
That's a pretty big question. I've seen a lot of things. What do you mean? Help me narrow that down a little bit.
Well, we're talking about change. We're talking about growth. So what are the changes? What are the growth in the company or in either one of us that have kind of either been the most dramatic or have impacted you the most or give you the most hope for what we're building? I guess if it's in regards to the company.
I mean, I suppose it's the collaborative nature of our meetings and getting together. There's a project that we actually just kind of birthed. We're going to get the collective hive mind together and brainstorm ideas for that. And that's nothing that most of the people who are in that meeting will never touch the project. But that's fine. That's more of like a crowdsourced intelligence. I think that we're still learning what the whole means for everybody working together. But there is this, it is a hive mind thing. We joke about it and call it the hive mind sometimes, but there is that. And I'm really looking forward to seeing how it evolves because right now it's very much, we believe this works. We're doing the best we can, but I'll bet that, next year or 5 years down the road, it's just totally evolved and it looks maybe a little different or refined from what it is now.
Oh, 1,000%. Yeah.
All right. So unless Dave has any final thoughts, wants to yell any final things, then I guess we're good.
How about that guy at Publix? Do you have anything to say about or to him, Dave?
Not on this show.
You're really resisting the combining of philosophies of both shows. We don't need to literally combine the shows.
Why don't you just close with a little story that starts, once upon a time I was at Publix?
No.
He's really resisting the merging. We wanted to bring you more Dave. We'll get it out of him. We'll tease it out of him. Pretty soon, if we give enough time, it's like Memento. After enough months, he'll forget that there was an old show.
Oh, that's a good strategy.
It'll be like that scene where
every day.
Be like that thing where Carrie Ann Moss is like, she's like, I'm gonna fuck with you. I'm gonna tell you something right now, and you're gonna forget it. And then he runs out of the car. He's trying to write things down.
That's the best scene ever.
I write there is a worst show ever on my skin every day. My whole body's covered in it.
Do you write it or cut it? Be honest.
Depends on the day.
I believe that answer.
All right. So thanks for listening to the Story Studio podcast. We will see you next time.
Bye-bye. Adios.